Hello there, welcome to ITV News Meridian.
Tonight's headlines here in the southeast. Flames rip through a popular leisure centre in Crawley in Sussex. An investigation is underway, but the fire may have been started deliberately.
With 12 fire engines and a number of specials here, it was a challenging scenario in terms of the heat as well. We had to consider the weather.
The hot weather causes problems on one of the main routes to Faversham, Whitstable, Herne Bay and Thanet, damaging the road and with repair work set for a week.
Also tonight, an historic win for Brighton as the Premier League returns. Sarah's here with all the sport.
And the joy of gardening without the aches and pains. If you're suffering with your knees and shoulders, we've got some top tips. Good evening. A fire at a leisure centre in Sussex is being treated as suspicious and the public told to avoid the area as firefighters continue to tackle hotspots today.
The fire at the Acorns Leisure Centre at Copthorne near Crawley broke out yesterday morning and spread quickly to the roof. More than 100 firefighters attended amid concerns over chemicals from the swimming pool. Well, our reporter Andy Dickinson is there for us tonight. Andy, what's the latest this evening?
Well, this fire broke out at around 7 a.m. yesterday with witnesses describing huge flames, and at its height up to 100 firefighters were tackling the blaze. The road was closed with 12 fire engines attending, some forced to remain overnight and even this morning damping down those hot spots. Thankfully, no one was injured and they managed to stop the fire from spreading, but the cause is now being investigated, with police also appealing for information and describing the fire as both significant and suspicious. This is what the West Sussex Fire and Rescue Service had to say to us earlier.
Well, as you can appreciate, with 12 fire engines and a number of specials here, it was a challenging scenario in terms of the heat as well. We had to consider the weather. There was a lot of smoke as well, as you can imagine, from the building. We had an appliance here earlier checking for hot spots just to make sure that everything was A-OK. Whilst the investigation officers are here, you know, if there is any issues, then clearly we'll come back and sort that out. But at the moment, the fire is out and the investigations are ongoing.
So, Andy, what more can you tell us about those investigations?
Well, as you may be able to see behind me, the investigation is ongoing. Sussex Police have said they will be a police presence in the area for some time and are advising people to avoid it as the buildings remain unsafe. Firefighters add that they were dealing with several risk factors here, not just the severity of the blaze, but the risk of chemicals used for the gym's swimming pool catching light. If and when, however, this leisure centre will reopen remains unclear.
Andy Dickinson, thank you very much for that.
In other news, a man who died at a holiday park in Camber Sands has been named as 53-year-old Michael McDonough, who was from London. Police have arrested a seventh person in connection with his death. Officers were called to the Parkdean resort on Friday night to reports of an altercation involving a group of people. 6 people who were arrested shortly after on suspicion of murder have been released on bail. Detectives have reassured the public that it was an isolated incident.
A 27-year-old man has been arrested after a car hit a roundabout and launched into the air in Dover. The crash on the A2 roundabout in Whitfield was captured on another driver's dash cam. It happened at 3 a.m. yesterday morning. The driver from Dover was arrested at the scene on suspicion of dangerous driving, possession of Class A drugs and driving while unfit through drink and drugs. He's been released pending further investigations.
A man's been jailed for 7.5 years for raping a teenager in an underpass in Hastings. 37-year-old Luke Anderson attacked the 17-year-old girl while she was sitting near Wellington Place in January. A passerby witnessed the assault and wrestled him off. He was later identified through CCTV and DNA.
The total number of people who have crossed the English Channel so far this year has passed 18,000, according to figures from the MOD. Yesterday, 337 people arrived in 10 small boats. So far this month, more than 1,700 people have been rescued by Border Force officers. The vast majority into Dover, but some have been taken to the port of Ramsgate due to concerns about congestion around the port. Figures show that since the Home Secretary Priti Patel announced the Rwanda deal on April the 14th, more than 12,800 people have still made the journey.
Ahead of a hosepipe ban coming into force in Kent and Sussex later this week, the Environment Secretary George Eustice is urging more water companies to impose tighter restrictions. From Friday, customers of South East Water who use a hose pipe to water the garden, wash their car or fill a paddling pool could face a £1,000 fine. The company says the South East only saw 8% of average rainfall in July.
Well, that prolonged hot weather is thought to be the cause of damage to one of the main routes in and out of Faversham, Herne Bay, Whitstable and Thanet. Emergency repairs are needed on the A299 Thanet Way and will begin later this week. It means the road is now down to one lane.
Well, it's likely to cause disruption to drivers heading to the coast, including visitors to this week's Folk Week festival at Broadstairs, which attracts thousands of tourists. Well, our reporter Tony Green sent this a little earlier.
Well, Kent County Council simply puts this down to a fateful combination of hot weather and geology. The ground underneath the A299, the Thanet Way, is largely clay at this point. And because there's been no rainfall and because the temperature's been so high, that clay has contracted and it's damaged the road surface above it. So Kent County Council has closed a lane of that for a week while they carry out overnight repairs. Now, this couldn't have come at a worse time, really, because it's the summer holidays. And for many in the north of the county, this is the road to the seaside. If you want to go to Herne Bay, to Whitstable, to Ramsgate, to Margate, to Broadstairs, this is the road you would take. And in Broadstairs this week, we have the Folk Festival. I spoke to the director of the Folk Festival, who told me the extra considerations she's had to make after a year of planning for a week of music.
The biggest impact is going to be actually getting our acts, our musicians who are coming down from Scotland, from Ireland, from the West Country, all over, making sure that they can actually get to their sound checks on time and get on the stage. I think from the point of view of the people who are actually coming to Broadstairs as audience, I'm hoping that the fact that at the end of the road are 7 lovely beaches and a very hot weather, that they're going to persevere even if there is obstructions in their way.
So for some motorists, at least in Kent, sitting in a queue in hot weather seems to be what's in store for them. But going forward, Kent County Council says the government has given them £4 million to resurface the road here to stop things like this happening in the future.
Tony Green reporting there. Now, cybercrime known as sextortion is a growing problem according to Sussex Police. It's where victims are befriended, often on social networking sites, and persuaded to share intimate photos which are then used for blackmail.
Well, Sussex Police says more than 170 crimes have been so far reported this year. Some people have lost thousands of pounds to the blackmailers, with victims often too embarrassed to report the crime. As Kevin Ashford now reports.
It's the dark side of modern life, criminals using the internet. The latest cybercrime to see a rise in popularity is a form of blackmail known as sextortion. We spoke to one victim. We've changed his voice to protect his identity. He was asked to join a text chat by a woman on a social networking site. She'd invited him and one of his mates to be friends on the site, and that mutual connection meant he was less suspicious. At first, their chat was general and innocent.
Hi, how are you?
Good, thanks. You?
I'm great. What are you doing at the moment?
Just relaxing. I've been working.
I'm just chilling too. What do you like to do for fun?
The woman then, unprompted, began a video call with him. She persuaded him to perform an intimate act on camera, which, unknown to him, was recorded.
They played back the recording of what had happened.
Yeah.
What went through your mind then?
Oh dear. What do I do in this situation? The first thing I did was call my dad and let him know what was happening.
And then they started demanding money?
Yes.
How much were they asking?
They were asking me for £4,000 at the start, and then when I told him I couldn't afford it, they lowered it to between £150 and £200.
Despite numerous threats, the victim paid the criminals nothing. They sent the footage to his stepmum and his dad.
Obviously very angry, distraught to a degree that people would go to such lengths just for money.
And it's your son as well.
Absolutely.
You feel protective.
You want to be protective. There's a bit of anger as well because of what's gone off and what people are trying to do, and they're trying to do it to your own family.
Police in Lewes say it's a problem that's on the increase.
We've had 174 crimes so far in Sussex this year, which is vast, and that's just the ones that we know about. So yeah, it's a fast-growing problem. It's got a lot bigger since COVID, and we see it particularly targeting young adult males, so students in particular, and it's a really awful, quite heartless crime.
Experts say everyone should be cautious about sharing intimate images.
Social media and the internet has left us very vulnerable. We feel that we're completely safe within our homes, and I think that's why people let their guards down. But I think there is always a risk with anything that you video or post on social media. There is a chance that it'll get into the wrong hands.
The advice for anyone who thinks they may be a victim of sextortion is not to panic. Support is available, and to not pay the blackmailers. They should save any evidence and report it to both the social media companies and the police. And to remember, as this National Crime Agency information video says,
and if you think you can talk me out of it, think again.
On the internet, not everyone is who they say they are. Kevin Ashford, ITV News.
More of the day's news now, and cannabis plants with a street value of £80,000 have been seized in Hastings. They were found by police at a property on Braybrook Road following a tip-off from the local community. A 27-year-old man has been arrested and released under investigation.
The new chief executive of Medway Maritime Hospital wants to make services better and drive up standards. Jane Black has just been appointed to the role. Earlier this year, inspectors rated the NHS Trust as requires improvement overall.
Organisers of Brighton Pride say the weekend's events were a huge success. Around 300,000 people partied as the famous community parade made its way from Hove Lawns to Preston Park for the first time in 3 years. This year's celebration theme was love, protest and unity, and the weekend-long festival generates around £20 million for the local economy. Planning for next year's Pride starts in October, and organisers have been reflecting on a great weekend.
The weekend's over. It's been actually fantastic. I mean, just seeing the city come alive, want to thank all the residents for coming out and showing support and, decorating their windows, and also thanks to the residents for, some of them who don't always like Pride happening, for, putting up with the noise and the kind of people in the city. But, it's fantastic for the city, and I think, it brings in so much money to the economy. So it's something that actually I think the city embraces, and I think it's a fantastic celebration. There were so many different acts across the site. It's not just the main stage, but obviously the headline acts, Christina and Ploma Faith. She was wonderful on Sunday. I mean, that was my personal highlight, Ploma. But it's everything really. It's all the it's all the different people coming onto the site. It's all the colourful. I think people really embrace the celebration. I think after 3 years of not doing it, I think people really needed it, and I think the city was alive, and I think we're really pleased with the way it went.
Looks like they go ball, doesn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. Great weather for it as well. Now you're watching ITV News in the Meridian region. Coming up on the programme, the sports with Sarah, and reaction, of course, to that historic win for Brighton over the weekend. Plus,
a different ball game, the film documenting Lewes FC's mission to achieve equality.
And as we head into another heatwave, how hot will it get and how long will it last? I will, of course, be here with all the details.
Plenty more from us on our website, of course. itv.com/Meridian is the address. You can call us. There's a number, 0808 1010 095. And as ever, don't forget to follow us on Facebook, Twitter and Instagram.
And the ITV Evening News continues with the national and international news at 6:30 with more details. Here's Charlene White.
Coming up, a child dies in an explosion at a house in South London. 3 others have been left with life-threatening injuries. We'll have the latest. Britain braces for another heat wave. As temperatures go up again, so too do fears of a drought. Britney's ex-husband, Kevin Federline, tells us her father and that conservatorship saved her life, and the real farmers of TikTok, while the new generation have turned to social media. Join us for those stories and much more from 6:30.
Lots more from us before that, though, of course. Sports time now. Sarah joins us in the studio. Sarah, good evening.
Thanks, Matt. Yes, the Premier League was back this weekend and Brighton have been celebrating an historic win. That's coming up. First, though, news out of Gillingham, where Chairman Paul Scally has confirmed he's to take an extended break from the role. The 67-year-old says he's going to reflect on his priorities, rest and focus on family. He describes being exhausted with stress and worry and says he's suffered personal abuse. And he's appointed Medway businessman Paul Fisher as co-chairman and to handle the day-to-day running of the club in his absence. Gillingham celebrated a deserved win over Rochdale at Priestfield, with 2 summer signings combining to score the winner. Scott Cashgett heading home on his home debut. Reduced season ticket prices under their new owners saw a bumper crowd at Crawley for their clash with Leyton Orient. They weren't rewarded with a win though, the Reds losing by 1-0 for a second consecutive game. Now, staying with football, and from sold-out stadiums to record TV audiences, the Lionesses' success at this summer's Euros has given women's football national exposure like never before. But for one Sussex club, making the sport more inclusive has long been part of their game plan. Lewes FC became the first club to pay their men's and women's squads equally back in 2017, and now they're the focus of a new documentary all about their unique approach to football, as Kit Bradshaw has been finding out.
Keeping up momentum is something they're well practiced for here at Lewes FC, and this club is uniquely placed to capitalise on the fresh excitement surrounding the women's game, following the Lionesses' glory at the Euros. Because 5 years ago this became the first side in the country to pay their men's and women's squads the same.
Normally, obviously, inside women's football, everyone's excited about it and we know it's special. But now it's kind of like the rest of the world has just switched on to how good it is.
And you're at a club that has for a long time put equality and focus on the women's game. And now that's on everyone's agenda. What does that feel like?
Yeah, we've been trying really hard to spread this message about for a long time. So it's good now that everyone else is switching on to it. But yeah, we'd like to be not the only club in the world that is Equality FC. And it looks like others are catching on now too.
For midfielder Paula Howells, getting into football often felt like an uphill battle when she was at school in Worthing.
I remember it was the World Cup and England were playing, and I had a boys' school right next to mine, and the boys were allowed to go home early and watch it, but the girls weren't. So I remember starting some sort of protest on my school field and just saying why. And I think those are the questions now that don't need to be asked, and they should just be accepted, that the girls can have just as much of an interest, if not more, than the boys.
For this club, equality isn't just about pay, it's also treating the men's and women's squads the same, from the same pitches, the same player budgets and the same marketing operation. The bosses say it's not just about fairness, but makes sound business sense too.
Get your bums, grab your friends and get to the game!
Their ethos, known as Equality FC, is the focus of a new feature-length independent documentary being released this week.
Equality for us has been great. You know, we've just hit our 5-year anniversary, our revenues have shot up, our attendances are shot up, we're fan-owned, we've more than doubled our owners in the last 5 years. I certainly think that we'll see many more clubs investing in their women and girls setup. Many of them will have to, because in a couple of weeks they will have probably hundreds of girls knocking on the door saying, I want to play too. Where are the coaches, where are the pitches, where are the facilities, where's the kit?
Thanks to a grant from the Premier League, this ground, known as the Dripping Pan, has just received a brand new pitch. It's almost ready for the first games of the new season, with the hope that the excitement of England's summer of success will help attract a whole host of new supporters through the turnstiles. Kit Bradshaw, ITV News, Lewes.
Now, more of us than ever before are taking pride in our gardens, but all that bending to dig, twisting to prune and carrying heavy loads can mean gardeners end up with unnecessary aches and pains.
Well, the most recent NHS figures show more than 12,000 people were admitted to hospital in England in the last year with injuries related to DIY or gardening. Chloe Oliver has been taking a look at how you can remain healthy as your garden blooms.
Gardening for many is a form of escapism.
nurturing the soil as well as the soul. But after hours of digging, pruning and weeding, sometimes it's not until later in the day that you realise the strain you're putting on your body. The head gardener at Nyman's in Haywards Heath says little and often is the key to avoiding injury.
I think the big thing for me is just breaking the day and the week up as much as possible. So varying the type of jobs you're doing so that you're not doing the same thing, hours on end all day, every day and all week. So moving things around as much as possible. So you might do some pruning, a bit of hedge cutting, some mowing and mixing things up where you can really. I think makes a big difference. It takes the pressure off particular areas of the body.
During lockdown, over 12,000 people were admitted to hospital for DIY or gardening-related injuries. That's according to the NHS digital figures, with 349 of those injuring themselves with a lawnmower. I met with TV garden designer Juliet Sargent, who's head of Sussex Garden School in a garden near Horsham, who, as a former medic, is in the perfect position to share how best to nip potential injuries in the bud.
So Juliet, we're in the garden today, hoping you can share with me a couple of your top tips about preventing injuries while gardening.
Yeah, okay, so in this weather it's lovely that everybody's getting out in the garden, but you do need to stay safe.
Yes.
And the first thing is to be careful of trip hazards. There's a step here, Chloe, so just watch out.
Yes.
And hoses can be a real pain, left trailing about, so just be careful that you don't end up tripping over. The other thing is to think about your back, because if you're absorbed with gardening you can be bending and stretching in an awkward way. So you need to, when you're lifting something heavy, put your feet a little bit apart and lift with your knees. So a pot like this, lifting.
Yeah, taking care.
Because you want to have fun in the garden, not end up in A&E. And then the other thing to mention is chemicals. A lot of people use chemicals in the garden, so you need to keep them away from pets and children. And in particular, dogs love bone meal. It comes as a powder, so make sure you sprinkle it lightly onto the soil, and then they may snuffle around, but they can't get enough to actually do some harm.
Busy working away at their allotments in the south, these gardeners told me the prospect of injury shouldn't put people off getting stuck in.
Apart from, being stung by a stinging nettle and being, jabbed by a thorn. It's exercise and, when in an allotment situation, you get to meet people as well, which is fantastic.
You have to be quite careful and know what the limits of your body are.
Whether you're tending to your allotment, community plot or back garden, when done with care, it can reduce stress levels, and it's worth noting that carrying out simple tasks for just an hour can burn up to 300 calories. Chloe Oliver, ITV News.
Good to know. Well, most people's gardens, like mine, are looking pretty parched at the moment. Holly's joined us. Holly, why is it so hot at the moment?
Yeah, well, I sort of touched on this on Friday. Unlike the heatwave back in July, where we saw this surge of air from Spain and from France, this time it's more what we call homegrown heat. So high pressure in place, and it's allowing temperatures to rise day on day. And of course, it's also the reason we haven't had any rain at all either. And I said we weren't quite sure how the end of the week was going to pan out this week. We know, of course, now that it is getting increasingly warm. So let's take a look at exactly what's going on. So yes, here's your high pressure. It's dominating the scene. And we're just seeing those temperatures ticking their way upwards as the surfaces in the air gets that bit warmer. But it starts to shift off to the east. This is the end of the week, and that is pulling in some warmer air from the continent, and it's just allowing these temperatures to climb that bit higher. So as a result, we're likely to see the peak of the heat, possibly pushing towards the mid-30s for some around about Friday and Saturday.
So hot, but not a record breaker.
That's right. This is a heat wave. It is a notable spell of hot weather, but it's not going to be as hot as we saw obviously last time where we exceeded 40 degrees. Slightly more prolonged perhaps, but we haven't got the same level of humidity, so that allows your body to cool down a little bit more easily, and we haven't quite got those extremely warm nights either, but they will still be up in the high teens. So yes, it is still a heat wave. Yes, it is still a notably hot spell of weather. Yes, it is going to last till Saturday, but it's not going to be the phenomenal heat we had before.
OK, well, on that slightly better news, let's get a full look at the forecast. Here's Holly, of course.
Feels like home, whatever the weather. Valent Boilers and Heat Pumps sponsors ITV Meridian Weather.
So lots of sunshine but no rainfall as we head into the next few days, and temperatures rising, peaking probably on Friday and Saturday before the potential for a thundery breakdown maybe Sunday or into the beginning of next week, although uncertainty about exactly how that will pan out at this stage. So our jet stream to the north, high pressure dominating the scene, giving us settled weather, dry weather, sunny weather, and allowing this air to get warmer and warmer. But we have got a bit of a northeasterly breeze around, so temperatures always a bit more pegged back where you are exposed to that direction. Out there this evening, lots of sunshine. You might just see a few scraps of fair weather cloud. And as we head into the night tonight, underneath starry skies, you could see a touch of mist or shallow fog in places, mainly around water sources like rivers, for example. These are typical temperatures, maybe a little bit lower than this out in the countryside. I think these values probably mostly staying a smidge higher than we saw last night. And not too warm, so I think still fairly comfortable conditions for sleeping. So into tomorrow, any mistiness will lift and clear, and it's much like today in the sense that there'll be lots of sunshine, but that northeasterly just a touch stronger. So again, where you are exposed to it, you will find temperatures here that little bit lower. Come inland though, and many of us feeding into the high 20s. Our high tide times, you've got Hastings there at 9:06 and again at 9:37 into the evening. So lots of sunshine. Yes, you've got that northeasterly, so around that coast temperatures always a bit lower, but come inland and we could, for many of us, see temperatures later in the week pushing into the 30s. Take care.
Valent sponsors ITV Meridian Weather.
Now, just before we go, there are just a few more days to find someone to represent our region at the Daily Mirror Pride of Britain Awards. It's the glitzy awards night where the stars of the show are ordinary people who have done extraordinary things. And it's where this year's National Fundraiser of the Year will be revealed.
So if you know someone who should be named our regional fundraiser and be in with a chance of getting that national title, why don't you just let us know? Winners must be aged 18 or over. Entries for individuals only will be considered. The closing date is this Friday, the 12th of August, and full terms and conditions can be found on our website. You've just got to head to itv.com/Pride of Britain. Follow the links, all the information you need to know, but you haven't got long, so do get cracking.
Time is running out. We need to be hearing from you. And in just a moment, the ITV Evening News tonight with Charlene White.
For now, that is it from us. I'm back with your late update at around 10:30. But for now, thanks for watching. Bye-bye.
Good night.